Invest this much money if you want to retire early. That's what we're going to talk about today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. We're going to look at two specific strategies that you can employ today to know how much you need to invest in your 401ks, your IRAs, your Roth IRAs, your 403b, your TSP, whatever retirement account or brokerage account that you're using to save for retirement, exactly how much you need to save to retire at 55. Retire at 50, retire at 60, or retire whenever you want. We're going to go through two strategies that are going to show you what you need to save today in today's dollars and what you need to save for your future self, because inflation is the real deal that we need to be thinking about. All right, so let's look at this. We're going to talk about the rule of 22, but let's do some data first on the individual who's trying to retire. First of all, we have a 40-year-old. They have $200,000 saved for retirement amongst 401ks, IRAs, brokerage accounts. They want to retire at 55. So we're looking at a 15-year time frame until they retire. So for the next 15 years, they're going to buckle down, save as much money as they can because they want to retire early. Keep in mind, if you retire at 55, you have to know, how am I going to get my retirement income? Because you're not 59 and a half yet. You're not Social Security age yet. So that's another video, but that's something you need to think about. They make $80,000 a year. They put 4% into their 401k and they get a 4% match. Okay, so they make $80,000 in salary, 4% is going into their 401k, they get a 4% match. And they're going to look at taking Social Security at 67. I want to give you two values for their Social Security at 67. The first value would be in today's dollars. So in today's dollars, if they took Social Security at 67, they would get $2,703 per month. Now that's in today's dollars, but we all know that Social Security has COLA increases. Prices go up, right? If you go to the grocery store to buy some blueberries, they're going to be more expensive in a month than they are today. So this is today's dollars, okay? But what about Social Security in the future? How much is that going to be? So in future dollars, Social Security at 67 would be $6,000. That's future dollars. Now, what you can do to calculate these two figures is go to the Social Security website, ssa.gov, go to their online calculators, and they will actually do the calculation for you. Now, assume if we retire at 55, we're not going to have 35 working years for Social Security. Those figures will be a little less, but we're just kind of get a good idea of how much we need to save and what Social Security will be when we get there. All right, so here's what the rule of 22 says. Now, we've talked about the 25X rule on this channel, which is simply take your expenses, multiply those by 25. That's how much you need to have saved for retirement. The rule of 22 kind of works the same way, but a little bit less. Take the income that you want in retirement and multiply that by 22. Now, they get $80,000 a year in salary. Let's use the replacement ratio, and let's say they want $60,000 a year in retirement income. So we take $60,000, we're going to multiply that by 22, and that gives us $1,320,000. But you might be saying, hey, Drew, that's in today's dollars, right? This is today's dollars. We don't want to know what today's dollars are going to be. We want to know what future dollars are going to be because they're 40. They've still got 15 years of working. So what would future dollars be? Well, it's easy. Just take the $60,000, give it inflation of 3.27%. That's what the 109-year average for inflation is. And so that means instead of $60,000, we would need right about $93,000. You multiply that by 22, and now it comes to almost $2 million bucks. We'll just use round numbers for easy math. Now, you can see the difference. It's literally a $680,000 difference by calculating in inflation. So make sure when you're doing any kind of calculators, whether you're 55 and you're retiring in 3 years, or you're 40 and retiring in 15 years, or you're thinking, I'm going to retire at 50, make sure you're calculating inflation and future value dollars. So here's what we got to do. We got to figure out how much do we need to invest into our retirement accounts to get to these figures. And it doesn't have to be necessarily on the dot. We could be in between somewhere, which means we might have to make some adjustments on when we want to retire. Again, they're 40. So by the time we get to 55, a lot's going to change. But we need to, right now, have some estimations of how much do I need to save to get me to where I want to go for my future self, right? Let's get into that right now. All right, we want to know how much we need to invest in order to retire early. And we have the data on age, how much we've saved. Now we need to know if we continue doing what we're currently doing, if we continue to invest in our retirement investing accounts the way we are currently investing, approximately how much money are we going to have when we want to retire? And then we need to back up and say, okay, do we need to invest more in order to get to where we want? Or do we have to adjust our goals? So let's look at that right now. All right, remember, 40-year-old, $200,000 saved, and we're putting 4% into our 401k and we're getting a 4% match. How much will we have if we want to retire at 55? So let's do the simple math. So we've got $200,000. We're going to make 8% a year. This is what we're going to earn in the market. So our $200,000 and our contributions are going to earn 8% a year. Now, the reason I'm going to use 8%, remember, I'm not picking out a particular year and saying, oh, the market was crappy in 2022, so they're not going to earn 8% a year because the market was really bad in the year 2022. No, no, no. We're going to look at long-term averages. We're going to take a pragmatic approach. We're going to be smart, and we're going to say, okay, over the last 50 years, the S&P 500 has averaged 8% with inflation. So it's 10% without inflation. It's 8% with inflation. So we're going to be real smart. We're going to invest in an S&P 500 index fund, low fee, track the market. Don't try to stock pick, and we're going to say, how much are we going to have at the end of 15 years? Because we're 40, we want to retire at 55, and we know that we need somewhere between $1.3 and $2 million to retire with the retirement income that we want, which is $60,000. We want $60,000 in today's dollars. Now, 15 years from now, that's $93,000. So that's how much retirement income we want. We understand that we're going to have Social Security at 67, which is going to bring that down, but we need to have a target to shoot at. So we've got $200,000. We're earning 8% a year. Our contribution and our match is $533. So that's our contribution and our match. That's the 4% of 80,000. So basically 8%, right? 4% contribution, 4% match, 8% of $80,000 divided by 12. This is our monthly contribution. So at the end of 15 years, we would have $845,000. That's really good. But that's not where we want to be based on retiring at 55. I'm not saying that's not a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's somebody who's putting in the work, putting in the effort, saving, contributing, investing. That person's doing the right job. But if they want to retire early, we want to see what we need to do. Okay, so that's where we're currently at. Let's go with, if we need to get to $1.3 million, how much do we need to save and invest and contribute? So $200,000, same example. We are 40 years old. We're going to go to 55. We're going to earn 8% a year because that's what the market's average. Remember, we're being smart about everything. We need $1,320,000. That's what we need to retire at 55 in order to have the $60,000 in retirement income that we want, plus Social Security. Now, I'm giving a little bit of a hedge on this money, meaning we're going to have a little bit more than we need because of market volatility, sequence of return risk, the risk that the market's going to fall when you step into retirement, the risk that Social Security benefits could be cut by 22% after the year 2033, the risk that you might get laid off. So we want to say, hey, let's put a little fluff in our retirement savings. So how much do we need to save to get to $1.3 million? Well, it's actually $1,903. Now that would be plus the match of 4% from the company. Let's do some quick math. Let me grab my calculator here. So $80,000 multiplied by 4%. Oops, 80,000. Multiply that by 4%. That is $266 a month. That's what we're putting in. The other $266 is coming from the company. Okay, so 4%, 4%. So down here, we take 1903, subtract out 266. So subtract out 266 because that's the company. We need to put in 1,637. So that would be our contribution to our 401k, to a brokerage account, to a Roth IRA, whatever, to get $1.3 million at 55. Now, keep in mind, this is just kind of a sidetrack for you. You need to invest in one of two vehicles if you want to retire at 55. If you want to retire at 55, you need to either be investing in your 401k, traditional or Roth, because you can use your current 401k for retirement income if you retire in the year that you turn 55 or after without a 10% penalty. That's called the rule of 55. Or you need to be contributing to a brokerage account, a taxable brokerage account, not an IRA, not a Roth, not a 403b, not a 401k, but just a plain Jane brokerage account in your name, a Drew Blackston, a Drew and Valerie brokerage account, because that way you can pull money out anytime. It's called a freedom fund. You have the freedom to retire whenever you want. So this money needs to be calculated into a 401k and a brokerage account. And that's something you want to talk to me about to figure out how do we want to situate our assets so that we can be the most tax efficient when we get to retirement. Okay, so now to get to 1.3 million, we know we got to put in $1,637 per month, earning 8%. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about any bonuses, any salary increases, anything like that. That could happen, and that would just help us out, right? So let's go to 2 million. The other figure that we need is 2,056,000. That is in future dollars. So this is today's dollars. Okay, so today, let's look at future. So the same formula, 8% is what we're going to get on the S&P. We need 2,056,000. That's what we need, $2 million. So how much do we have to contribute? Well, 4,030. Now subtract out 266. That's the company's match to what you're putting into your 401k. So basically, you got to put in $3,764 per month to get to 2,056,000. Now multiply that by 12. That's $45,000. $45K a year. Now remember what our salary was for this person, and this is a real case. Their salary is $80,000 a year. So we got to take over half of our salary, put it into our 401k to get $2 million to retire at 55, and this is future dollars. This is with inflation. Okay? Now, the $80,000 is gross. So let's take out 8 of that for taxes. So that's $72,000 is what we've got. 72 minus 45, that leaves us $27,000 a year, or about 30, what's that, 27, divide that by 12, that leaves us $2,250 a month to live off of in order to get to that $2 million in future dollars. Or you got to earn more than 8% a year, which I'm just saying that's what the market's averaged over the long term. It could average 10, it could average 15. That's what it did the last decade. But I'm not going to calculate, I'm not going to say it's going to average 15% a year. So in this case, we might be saying, hey, John, hey, Sally, it actually makes a little bit more sense to invest as much as you can. Now, I don't want you living on rice and beans. Now, I like rice and beans, it's good for my heart, and I enjoy the meal. But You're 40, you've got little kids, I want you to enjoy life a little bit. Maybe say, what about retiring at 60 or retiring at 65 or slowing down at 55 or slowing down at 60 or changing jobs that are to make it less stressful. So there's always different things that we can think about. But if you're wanting to invest to retire early, that's exactly what you need to do. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.